Hi everybody, in this video we are going to continue to discuss about the chapter chemical coordination and integration. Chemical coordination and integration. So in this chapter we are going to discuss about the hormones that are produced from this pituitary gland. So there are some hormones that are produced from the pituitary gland. And in the previous video we studied that the pituitary gland is of three lobes. The first lobe is called as anterior lobe, and the second lobe is called as the intermediate lobe, and the third lobe is called as the posterior lobe. But we also discussed and stressed saying that the intermediate lobe is merged with the anterior lobe. So there are terms that we have come across like the adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. Adenohypophysis is the anterior lobe, which is also called as what? Pars distalis, and neurohypophysis is called as pars nervosa. So larger part is the anterior lobe, that is adenohypophysis, and smaller part is the posterior lobe, that is neurohypophysis. So from these lobes, what are the hormones that are produced or that are stored, we are going to discuss now in this video. So now the first one, if you are seeing from the pituitary gland, as we already said that there are hormones that are produced from the anterior lobe, and anterior lobe we also call it as what? Pars distalis. Okay, pars distalis we are calling it as. So from the pars distalis, that is called as the anterior lobe, these are the hormones that are produced. The first one is called as what? Growth hormone. The first one is called as the growth hormone, and the second one is prolactin. Second one is prolactin, and the third hormone that is produced from the pars distalis, otherwise called as what in simple? Anterior lobe. It is called as thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone. And the fourth one is adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Adrenocorticotrophic hormone. And the fifth one is luteinizing hormone. Fifth one is luteinizing hormone. And the last one is follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone we say. Now these are the hormones that are produced from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. From the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, all these hormones are produced. And from the intermediate lobe, even though we are saying that the intermediate lobe is merged with the anterior lobe, still we are highlighting here and studying it in detail that the hormone that is produced from the intermediate lobe, the hormone that is produced from the intermediate lobe is melanocyte stimulating hormone. Melanocyte stimulating hormone is the hormone produced from the intermediate lobe, and this intermediate lobe is called as what? Pars intermedia. Okay, it is called as the pars intermedia, we are calling it as. Okay, pars intermedia. So here the next one is the posterior lobe. Okay, next one is the posterior lobe. Posterior lobe we can also call this as what? Pars nervosa. Okay, pars nervosa we are calling it as, or otherwise we are calling it as the neurohypophysis. We are calling it as the neurohypophysis. So from the pars nervosa, as we already said and stressed in the previous video, please remember that there are no hormones that are produced from the posterior lobe. Hormones are not produced from the posterior lobe. Hormones are stored in the posterior lobe. There are two important hormones that are stored in the posterior lobe: oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin and vasopressin. Vasopressin is also called as antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone. Okay, it is also called as antidiuretic hormone, and in short we are calling this as ADH. Okay, we call this as ADH. Okay, antidiuretic hormone. And remember, these two hormones, okay, that are there present now in the posterior lobe, remember that these are only stored in the posterior lobe. They are not produced in the posterior lobe. Then from where they are produced, already we said that these two hormones are produced from the hypothalamus region of the brain. From the hypothalamus region of the brain. In the hypothalamus region of the brain, there are neurosecretory cells. Neurosecretory cells. These neurosecretory cells will be producing this hormone, and that hormone, these hormones called as oxytocin and vasopressin, they will be brought into the posterior lobe and they are stored. So this is a storage area. Posterior lobe is a storage area for these two hormones which are produced in the hypothalamus from the neurosecretory cells. So these are neurohormones. These are also neurohormones that are produced in the hypothalamus, stored in the posterior lobe. Now from these hormones, that are there now present or produced in the pituitary gland. Okay, we are going to study now in detail. In detail, we are going to study about these hormones that are produced in the posterior lobe, or otherwise those hormones that are there stored in the posterior lobe, or those which are produced from the anterior lobe. Now see the first one, growth hormone. Growth hormone. So growth hormone is produced in the pituitary gland. It is produced in the pituitary gland. Where it is produced in the pituitary gland? It is in the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. And this particular hormone will be acting upon these cells which will be involved in growth and development of the body. The cells which are involved in growth and development of the body, okay, are there, okay, multiplied because of this particular hormone. Because of this particular hormone called as growth hormone. So those parts of our body which are showing growth and development are now stimulated by the growth hormone for their growth and development. Especially the muscle cells and the bones are now stimulated by the growth hormone. And here the major functions that if we are seeing in the growth hormone, it stimulates the growth. Okay, as I said, it stimulates the growth. This is the major function that we have to keep in mind. What is the function of growth hormone means? It stimulates the growth. Not only stimulating the growth, but it also promotes protein metabolism. It also promotes protein metabolism. Okay, it also involves in bringing up protein metabolism in these cells. So protein metabolism is now under the control of what now? Growth hormone. Because proteins are very important for growth and development of the body. So in the nutrients, apart from the carbohydrates and fats, proteins will be very important for our growth and development. So here growth hormone is helping in what? In metabolism of those proteins for the easy growth, for well development of those cells. And at the same time, absorption of calcium. Absorption of calcium, from where the calcium is absorbed, it is from the bowels. Means what? From the digestive system. So growth hormone also helps in absorption of this calcium from the diet or from the food that we take, from the bowels we say. Bowels means the digestive system. So from the bowels the calcium is absorbed. Okay, the calcium is absorbed. And moreover, please remember that this particular growth hormone is also involved in conversion of glucose into glycogen. In conversion of glucose into glycogen. Please remember, I am stressing here, remember that conversion of glucose into glycogen is now done by two hormones that are produced by the pancreas. Those two hormones are what? Insulin and glucagon, that we are going to study. But at the same time here, please remember that conversion of glucose into glycogen is also brought by the growth hormone. By growth hormone. So growth hormone helps in what? Stimulates the growth. Helps in protein metabolism, absorption of calcium, and also involved in conversion of glucose into glycogen. So because glucose, it is a very important carbohydrate which is required for the growth and development, and it may be there more in quantity present in our body, and it should not be there. In excess it should not be there. Glucose should not be there in our body. That's why this glucose, which is soluble product, is converted into insoluble product and stored. And whenever we are starving or lack of glucose, or when you are fasting, in such cases the stored glycogen is again converted into glucose and supplied to the cells so that it is being used as energy. So here the point here is that what happens when this growth hormone is produced in excess quantity? Means what? Hypersecretion. When it is produced in hypersecretion, we call it as hypersecretion or oversecretion also. Hypersecretion or oversecretion. So what happens when this growth hormone is produced in excess quantity? So here we are just looking the disorders that are caused due to the excess, okay, due to the excess production of the growth hormone. When growth hormone is produced in more quantity, means what I said is hypersecretion, okay, hypersecretion. So due to the hypersecretion of growth hormone, that particular individual may be showing the abnormal growth. Means the child or that individual will be suffering or will be called as the gigantism. Okay, we call him as what? Gigantism. In simple, what we call, the person is very tall than the normal height. The person will be very tall than the normal height. In such cases, we are using one term, technical term called as gigantism. The person will be very tall. Okay, gigantism we call it as. So that is caused by what? Due to hypersecretion. Hypersecretion means what? Oversecretion. More secretion of what? Growth hormone. So when growth hormone is produced in more quantity, it stimulates the body cells to show more growth, and it will lead to what now? Gigantism. Gigantism means the person will be very tall, we are saying. And in the same way, okay, if it is produced in less quantity, hyposecretion. Okay, hyposecretion means produced in very less quantity. Deficiency. In simple, we say it as deficiency. There we are saying oversecretion. Here we are saying less secretion, that is deficiency. When growth hormone is produced in very less quantity, then that person will be suffering with a disorder which we call it as dwarfism. Okay, a disorder which we are calling it as dwarfism. Dwarfism means what? The person will be very short than the normal height. Okay, the person will be very short than the normal height. And these are the most familiar ones that we see, okay, in a person in whose body that this particular hormone is produced in more quantity, it is leading to gigantism, we are saying. If it is produced in less quantity, we are saying dwarfism. But apart from this, there is also another disease or disorder. There is also another disorder which is unnoticeable. Okay, we cannot notify that clearly that it is we can say that it is unchecked. You cannot see all those defects or disorder clearly. We cannot see that disorder clearly because of oversecretion of growth hormone. This is specially seen in the adults. Okay, seen in the adults, where it leads to one disorder called as acromegaly. Okay, it leads to a disease called as acromegaly in the adults. Okay, in the adults. Please remember, it's very important. It is very important, called as acromegaly. Which is like the face will be puffy shape. Okay, puffy like, and this is generally seen in the people who are adults. Okay, who are adults, and that disease is called as the acromegaly. This cannot be identified in the early stages, but it can be a severe problem when the child is growing or becoming an adult, and it should be identified well in advance so that they can treat that particular disorder. So this is called as what now? Acromegaly. Okay, acromegaly. If it is not identified, it becomes very severe. So in early stages only, it should be identified, called as what? Acromegaly. So this is seen in the adults. Okay, you have to remember that. Now the next one is prolactin. Okay, prolactin. Okay, the next hormone that is produced from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, called as what? Adenohypophysis. Adenohypophysis. That is what? The pars distalis. The next one is prolactin. Okay, prolactin. Prolactin is also called as mammotropin hormone. Please remember this. Prolactin is also called as mammotropin hormone. It is also called as mammotropin hormone. Okay, so remember this. And also another name is called as luteotrophic hormone. Luteotrophic hormone. It is also called as luteotrophic hormone. So here, if you are seeing, okay, what are the functions? Now, the very first thing that we have to remember is that prolactin is a hormone that is seen or produced from the pituitary gland of the females. It is not seen in the males. Okay, it is not seen in the males. The prolactin hormone will not be synthesized in the males, because this prolactin helps in what? Active growth of breast. Okay, active growth of breast during the pregnancy time. So when a woman is conceived or pregnant, during that period of time, this particular hormone prolactin will be released in small quantities. Already we said that hormones are produced in trace amounts. So this will be produced in very little, minute quantities, which will be stimulating the breast. Okay, which will be stimulating the breast, that is especially during the pregnancy. And at the same time, this particular hormone helps in secretion of mammary glands after the childbirth. Means what? Helps in secretion of milk. Helps in secretion of milk. That's the point we have to remember here. So prolactin right after the childbirth. What is the function of this? It is helping in production, secretion of milk. Okay, secretion of milk. That's the point we have to remember. So here prolactin is helping in growth of the breast in women, and at the same time it is helping in production of milk after the childbirth. And as we already said that this prolactin is also called as what? Luteotropic hormone. We are also calling it as luteotropic hormone. So here, if you are seeing this luteotropic hormone, it is helping also in stimulating the corpus luteum of the ovary to secrete progesterone. So if you are seeing the ovary of a female, say suppose if this is the ovary of a female, inside the ovary there will be a layer of cells which we call them as germinal epithelium cells. Okay, there will be a layer of cells called as germinal epithelium cells. So from these germinal epithelium cells, they will be forming, okay, they will be undergoing mitosis as well as meiosis to produce one follicle called as what? The Graafian follicle. The Graafian follicle. When this Graafian follicle matures, okay, when this Graafian follicle matures, it is this Graafian follicle which is having the egg. Which is having the egg. Now this egg is released out from the ovary. Okay, it is released out from the ovary. And this process, as you all know, that we are calling it as what? Ovulation, releasing of ovary from the ovary, we say, or that is inside the ovary. What is the structure that is there? We are calling it as the Graafian follicle. Okay, we are calling it as the Graafian follicle. So from the Graafian follicle, what is released? Egg is released. Right after the releasing of egg from the Graafian follicle, that is present in what now? That is present in the ovary. The remaining residue of what? The Graafian follicle. This one is called as the corpus luteum. Okay, this is called as what now? Corpus luteum. So this corpus luteum is now the one which will be producing a hormone called as what now? The progesterone. Okay, it will be called as the progesterone. And progesterone is a hormone that is released from the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum will be remaining, okay, throughout the gestation period. Throughout the gestation period, it will be remaining in the ovary, producing what? Progesterone. So here we have come across now the growth hormone and also the prolactin. Growth hormone and prolactin. And we have said that prolactin is also called as what? Mammotropic hormone or luteotropic hormone. And now we will discuss about the next hormone called as the thyroid stimulating hormone. Called as the thyroid stimulating hormone. So this is also produced from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, also known as what? Pars distalis, or otherwise adenohypophysis we are saying. Now thyroid stimulating hormone, which is produced from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, now stimulates the thyroid gland. Okay, stimulates the thyroid gland that is present in our body. Okay, thyroid gland. This is also an endocrine gland. So thyroid gland. Then the thyroid gland will be synthesizing and secreting its respective hormones. Okay. Then the thyroid gland will secrete. Okay. Will secrete or secretion and or otherwise we can say synthesis of its respective hormone will be seen. Okay. Secretion and synthesis of the respective hormone that is produced from the thyroid gland. That is nothing but the thyroxine, which we are going to study in detail about the thyroid gland. Okay, about the thyroid gland. So, thyroid stimulating hormone produced from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland is released into the bloodstream, travels through the blood or carried by the blood, and now reaches to a gland called as the thyroid gland. It stimulates the thyroid gland for the synthesis or secretion of their respective hormones. That is, the hormone that should be produced from the thyroid gland. The hormones that are produced from the thyroid gland are produced only when the thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates the thyroid gland. So this is produced from where now? It is produced from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. And another one is called as adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Okay, another one we are calling it as adrenocorticotrophic hormone. We are calling it as, okay, adrenocorticotrophic hormone. So this adrenocorticotrophic hormone, okay, adrenocorticotrophic hormone. Also helps in synthesis and secretion of its respective hormone, those are called as the glucocorticoids. Okay, glucocorticoids. Okay, glucocorticoids. Okay, glucocorticoids. Please remember this. Okay, glucocorticoids. Please remember this. Okay, glucocorticoids are steroid hormones. Remember this. Glucocorticoids are steroid hormones that are produced from the adrenal gland. Okay, from the adrenal gland. Means here, very important point that we have to remember is that adrenal gland is, again, when we are taking the adrenal gland, okay, that is found as the cap-like structure on one on each kidney, So if you take that adrenal gland and cut it in transverse section, you will be seeing two regions very clearly called as adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. So here we are stressing that from the adrenal gland, okay, from the adrenal gland, we are looking at the adrenal cortex. Okay, we are looking at the adrenal cortex. Please remember this. Okay, please remember this. Adrenal cortex. Adrenal cortex of what? Adrenal gland is producing which hormone? It is producing glucocorticoids. These are steroid hormones. These are steroid hormones. So, adrenocorticotrophic hormone stimulates the adrenal cortex of the adrenal gland. Stimulates the adrenal cortex of the adrenal gland. Then the adrenal cortex will be producing steroid hormones called as what? Glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids. We will be again discussing about what happens when these are produced in more quantity or what happens when they are produced in less quantity, which means disorders. Hypersecretion, hyposecretion. We are going to check them and study about them in very detail. Now, the next one is gonadotrophins. Gonadotrophins. Gonadotrophins are nothing but luteinizing hormone, okay, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. These two hormones togetherly they are called as what? Gonadotrophins. Okay, gonadotrophins we are calling them as. Remember that. Okay, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone are togetherly called as what? Gonadotrophins. So we are going to now look at about the gonadotrophins. So gonadotrophins, which are called as what? Luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. If they are, or when they are, okay, when they are produced in the males, luteinizing hormone will help in synthesis and secretion. Okay, synthesis and secretion of what? Androgens. Okay, male sex hormones we say androgens. Okay, androgens are produced like testosterone. Okay, like testosterone, male sex hormone. Male sex hormone. That is under the control of what now? Luteinizing hormone. Under the control of luteinizing hormone. Now, once the luteinizing hormone produced from where? From the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland reaches the testes and stimulates the testes to produce the androgens. Then these androgens and along with the next hormone called as what? Follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone. Androgens plus follicle stimulating hormone. These two togetherly, okay, these two togetherly helps in the process of spermatogenesis. Helps in the process of spermatogenesis. What is spermatogenesis? Spermatogenesis means the process of formation of sperms. The process of formation of sperms is called as what? Spermatogenesis. Male sex cells. Male sex cells. The process of formation of sperms is called as spermatogenesis, which means for the formation of the sperms, there are hormones that are very important called as what? Follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These two hormones help in the process of what? Spermatogenesis. How the luteinizing hormone is helping? Luteinizing hormone stimulates the testes to produce the androgens. Androgens plus the another hormone produced from what? Anterior lobe of the pituitary gland called as follicle stimulating hormone. These two together helps in the process of formation of sperms, which we are calling it as spermatogenesis. Now here these these are also produced in the females. Okay, these hormones are also produced in the females. So when they are produced in the females, okay, when they are produced in the females, now luteinizing hormone, okay, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, both are also produced in the females. Okay, both are also produced in the females. Please remember, prolactin, it is produced only in the females. It is produced only in the females. And we have said that it is also called as what? Prolactin is also called as what? In the previous one, mammotropin we said, because it is helping in the growth of the mammary glands. And we also said that it is luteotropic hormone because it is helping in stimulating the corpus luteum for producing what? Progesterone we said. Okay, so please remember that hormone prolactin, okay, prolactin is also called as hormone of maternity, hormone of maternity. That is about prolactin I am telling you, okay, hormone of maternity. But here luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, these are produced both in males and females, but their function is different. So function in the sense for the formation of what? Okay, so females luteinizing hormone, it helps in what? Ovulation. Okay, ovulation is a word that you already studied. Okay, that you already studied. Ovulation means what? Releasing of egg from the ovary. Releasing of egg from the ovary is called as what? Ovulation. So for releasing of the egg is under the control of which hormone now? Luteinizing hormone. That is now brought or produced in the pituitary gland, anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, reaches the ovaries, stimulates the ovaries for what process? Ovulation, to release the egg from the ovary. And after the releasing of egg, that Graafian follicle, because we said in the ovary, already we said that if this is the ovary, here is the Graafian follicle. Now once from the Graafian follicle, egg is released, so leftover remnant, leftover part, remnant we say. So the leftover part is called as what? Corpus luteum we are saying. So corpus luteum will be involved in production of what? Progesterone. So luteinizing hormone helps in maintaining the corpus luteum. Helps in maintaining the corpus luteum. And at the same time now, follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone helps in growth and development of the ovarian follicle that is present in the ovary. That is present in the ovary. What is this ovarian follicle? Ovarian follicle is another name for Graafian follicle. Okay, ovarian follicle or Graafian follicle is the same. So we have to remember that ovarian follicles for growth and development, where they will be carrying what now? Egg. It is called as what now? The ovarian follicle. So follicle stimulating hormone produces the ovarian follicles. So now we are going to discuss about the hormones that are produced from the pars intermedia, means intermediate lobe, and also from the posterior lobe, means pars nervosa. So first we will see in the pars intermedia. As we already said that if it is in the human's pituitary gland, pars intermedia is merged with the anterior lobe actually. But still we are looking in detail that what hormone or which hormones are produced from the intermediate lobe, which is called as pars intermedia. There is only one hormone that is produced from the pars intermedia or intermediate lobe of the pituitary gland. That is called as melanocyte stimulating hormone. Melanocyte stimulating hormone. So here is that hormone. It's called as what? Melanocyte stimulating hormone. Okay, melanocyte stimulating hormone. In short, we are writing it as MSH. So this melanocyte stimulating hormone acts on the melanocytes. What are melanocytes? These are melanin containing cells. Okay, a pigment. Okay, melanin is a pigment. Melanin containing cells. Okay, melanin containing cells. So melanocyte stimulating hormone acts on the melanocytes. These melanocytes are melanin containing cells. Okay, melanin containing cells. Melanin is a pigment, remember that. So this, when it acts upon these melanocytes, it helps in regulating the pigmentation of the skin. Regulation of pigmentation of the skin. Color of the skin. Color of the skin. Color of the skin is now under the control of which hormone now? Melanocyte stimulating hormone. Because it stimulates the cells to produce more amount of melanin. Okay, the more the melanin is produced, the darker is the color. The less the melanin, lighter is the color of the skin, we say. Okay, so that is about the melanocyte stimulating hormone. This is the only one hormone produced from the intermediate lobe, which is called as pars intermedia. And now the next one is pars nervosa. Okay, pars nervosa. Pars nervosa is the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, or neurohypophysis we are saying. Neurohypophysis. Okay, posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Okay, neurohypophysis. Now in the pars nervosa, okay, pars nervosa, here there are two hormones that are produced. There are two hormones that are stored in the pars nervosa, neurohypophysis. Oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin and vasopressin. These two hormones are now stored in the pars nervosa. Very important thing, let us remember that when we are talking about this, okay, this particular lobe, okay, pars nervosa, okay, pars nervosa is directly under the control of the hypothalamus, under the control of hypothalamus, or otherwise we can say hypothalamus containing the neurosecretory cells. Those neurosecretory cells are directly entering into the pars nervosa. Please remember this. Hypothalamus is rich in containing neurosecretory cells. These neurosecretory cells are directly entering into the pars nervosa, and they release these hormones into the pars nervosa. They release these hormones into the pars nervosa. So hormones are present here. What are those two hormones that are brought by the neurosecretory cells of the hypothalamus? They are nothing but the oxytocin and vasopressin, which are already synthesized in the hypothalamus. They are brought and stored in the pars nervosa, means posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. But when we are talking about the anterior lobe, it is not directly under the control of the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus will be releasing the releasing factors. They will be helping in connecting to the blood vessels that will be there here, okay, as a mediator. So these blood vessels that are connecting the, okay, nerves that are coming from the hypothalamus, okay, from the hypothalamus and to the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, okay, these blood vessels form the, okay, portal circulation system, okay, portal circulatory system. They form the portal circulatory system, they form. So through these blood vessels forming the portal circulatory system, or otherwise we can also call this as hypophyseal portal vein, okay, hypophyseal, okay, hypophyseal portal veins we call, okay, hypophyseal portal veins. It is these hypophyseal portal veins which will be helping in collecting those hormones produced in the hypothalamus of the brain, releasing it into the anterior lobe. Those hormones are called as releasing factors. So these releasing factors will be stimulating what? The anterior lobe to produce all these hormones. Okay, all these hormones, of course, except what? Oxytocin and vasopressin. Now we are looking at the oxytocin. Oxytocin is produced both in males and females. Remember that. It is produced in males and females. But it is produced in very, very minute quantities. It is produced in minute quantities. So oxytocin that is produced both in males and females acts on smooth muscles. It acts on smooth muscles. It acts on smooth muscles and stimulate the smooth muscles to undergo contraction. So all these smooth muscles which are there in both males and females will undergo contraction due to the oxytocin that is produced in very, very minute quantities. But the point here is that the same oxytocin which is helping in contraction of the smooth muscles is produced in more quantity. It is produced in more quantity in females. Okay, it is produced in more quantity in females. And you have to now understand that why it is produced in more quantities in the females, or when it is produced. Especially this particular hormone known as oxytocin, it is produced in more quantities in the females during the parturition. So in females, it will be creating vigorous contraction of uterus. Uterus, we commonly call it as what? Womb. Okay, the commonly called as what? Womb. So for the vigorous contraction of the uterus, that is womb, now what is required? Oxytocin is required. When there will be vigorous contraction of the uterus? During the childbirth. So that we are calling as what? Parturition. Act of giving birth for the child. We call it as parturition. So during the childbirth, the uterus walls will be contracting, compressed, so that the baby will be coming out. So for the contraction of the muscles, it is now the oxytocin which helps in bringing up those contractions of the uterus walls. So during which time oxytocin will be produced in more quantity, causing vigorous contraction, we say. And this particular hormone should not be confused with another hormone which we already studied as prolactin. You have to be very, very careful when you are talking about the prolactin and oxytocin. Please remember, for the secretion, for the production of milk, it is prolactin. For the production of milk, it is the prolactin. Remember that. That's very important. For the production of milk, it is the prolactin. But right after that, okay, for milk ejection during the childbirth, right after the child is born, the milk is ejected with the help of what now? Oxytocin. Oxytocin, by the first suckling of the baby child, okay, by the first suckling of the baby child from her mother's breast, immediately oxytocin will be released and it will release the channels in the mammary glands. So that's why we say that oxytocin is helping in what? Milk ejection during the childbirth. Okay, during the childbirth. Means after the childbirth, exactly after the childbirth, or there will be milk ejection from the mammary glands. That is under the control of what? Oxytocin. But for the production of milk, it is prolactin. Okay, it is prolactin. So in this area, you have to be very remember. So you have to remember this point very carefully. Oxytocin, that's why it is called as birth hormone. Please remember, name the birth hormone means what? It is oxytocin. Name the other hormone called as the milk ejection hormone. Okay, name the milk ejection hormone, not production of milk. It is milk ejection hormone. Milk ejection hormone is what? Oxytocin. Name the hormone which helps in producing milk means it should be prolactin. So here, that's why oxytocin is called as birth hormone, we call it as, or otherwise oxytocin is also called as milk ejection hormone. Milk ejection hormone we call it as. So here, that's the points we have to remember when we are talking about the oxytocin. Okay, oxytocin. And here, another one, milkmen. Okay, milkmen. I'm talking about milkmen. Those who collect the milk from the cattle. Okay, from the cattle or the dairy farm, husbandry, animal husbandry. Okay, so when we are talking about the cows and buffaloes, the milkmen they are called. Okay, these milkmen will be giving synthetic oxytocin. Please remember this. They will be giving to those cows and buffaloes synthetic oxytocin. That synthetic oxytocin is called as pitocin. Okay, pitocin. Please remember this word, pitocin. The synthetic oxytocin, pitocin. This will stimulate the mammary glands of those animals to produce more milk. Okay, to produce more milk. So you have to remember this one. Name the synthetic oxytocin means it is pitocin. Okay, pitocin. Please remember, which is used by the milkmen for administering into the cattle, so that the cattle will be giving more milk. Okay, pitocin we say. And the last one is the vasopressin. Vasopressin is also produced from the hypothalamus region of the brain, and this is brought by the neurosecretory cells into the pituitary gland. Which lobe of the pituitary gland? It is the posterior lobe, neurohypophysis, or otherwise we are calling it as pars nervosa. So it is brought into that area and it is stored. As per the need, it is released. Vasopressin acts on what? Kidneys. It is acting on the kidneys. It acts on the kidneys and helps in reabsorption of water, which means it will be controlling the water loss and gain. Means it will not allow the loss of water simply. There will be no loss of water simply through the urine. So it is this hormone, vasopressin, which helps in reabsorption of water that is been getting excreted through the kidneys. Suddenly, when the body is given some work, some task, when it is doing some task or performing some activity, there may be dehydration in the body. But by then, the water might have gone, all that excess water that is there in the body might have gone for excretion through the kidneys, into the kidneys. But once it enters into the kidneys and immediately, if the water is required, now it is this hormone, vasopressin, which acts on the distal convoluted tubule of the kidneys, means nephrons. Okay, here you know the structure of a nephron. Okay, if this is the nephron, here it will be having different regions we say. So here this we call it as proximal convoluted tubule, and this part we call it as what? Distal convoluted tubule. So we are talking about this part called as distal convoluted tubule. So here is the nephron. Okay, with the Bowman's capsule, loop of Henle. So these structures may be there millions in each kidney. So from this region called as distal, ending part, distal convoluted tubule of the nephron, what will be absorbed? Water will be reabsorbed back and brought to circulation again, so that we will not suffer with dehydration, and due to which we see there will be reduced, thereby it is reducing what? Water loss through what? Urine, that we call it as diuresis. Okay, reducing the water loss of water through urine, reducing the loss of water through urine, which we are calling it as what? Diuresis. Okay, it reduces the loss of water through urine. So we should not lose more water, only the excess water should be eliminated, and that is under the control of what now? Vasopressin. Because it is reducing or preventing the loss of water, this particular hormone called as vasopressin is also called as what? Antidiuretic hormone. It is also called as antidiuretic hormone. In short, we are calling it as ADH. ADH. And now the point is that if at all, if this particular hormone called as vasopressin, ADH, if it is not produced in sufficient quantity, it will affect the functioning of kidneys. It will affect the functioning of kidneys, which means that particular individual may be losing more water from his body in the form of urine. So it affects the functioning of the kidneys, leading to one disease which I am writing here called as diabetes insipidus. Okay, please remember this. Diabetes insipidus is the disease or disorder we say. Okay, insipidus. Okay, please remember, it is this disorder which is caused diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus means what? In simple, we can say frequent urination. They will be going frequently for urine. Frequently going for urine means what? They are losing more water from their body. What makes them to lose more water from their body? It is because improper functioning of the kidney. What makes the improper functioning of the kidney? It is the vasopressin that is produced in very, very less quantities. So we have to remember, when vasopressin is not produced, okay, when vasopressin is not produced, it is affecting the functioning of kidneys, where the kidneys, okay, cannot reabsorb, or from the kidneys it is not easy to reabsorb more water. That's why our body through the kidneys will be losing more water. That loss of water frequently through urination, we are calling it as what? Diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus. Note here one point. We have to remember it as diabetes insipidus, and we should not say diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is another disorder which is related to the sugar accumulation in the blood. Okay, so diabetes, you cannot use only a word like diabetes. We should use a two complete word like diabetes insipidus, diabetes mellitus. Diabetes insipidus means what? When there is frequent urination observed in a particular individual, it is a disorder called as diabetes insipidus. What is diabetes mellitus? Diabetes mellitus means when there is excess of sugar present in the blood, we are calling it as diabetes mellitus, which we are going to study in the later part of this chapter. So here we have to remember all these hormones that are produced from the pituitary gland, okay, from the pituitary gland, from different parts called as anterior lobe, intermediate lobe. They are producing the hormones, but the posterior lobe is not producing the hormones. It is only storing the hormones that are produced from where? From the hypothalamus region of the brain. Hope you understood all these points that which we discussed in this video. Thank you so much.